All right, so let's jump into this deep dive and take a look at the works of Fabio Robles.
Yeah.
You've given me a collection of his writings here, a mixture of poetry and prose.
Yeah.
And
It's powerful stuff.
one thing that really jumps out is how incredibly open and honest he is. I mean, this is a man who really lays it all out there.
Oh, absolutely. There's a vulnerability there that grabs you right from the start.
Yeah, and you see that right away with his writing about insomnia.
Hmm.
There's this one part early on where he talks about dreaming of someone he used to love and waking up with all these mixed feelings, like a tenderness, but also this like deep conflict.
Hmm.
Even his sleep is like this battleground for all these intense emotions.
Yeah, it's like his subconscious is trying to work through these things even when he's asleep.
Hmm.
And that feeling of longing, that grappling with lost love and unrequited love, it comes up again and again in his work.
It does, and he uses these really powerful images to get that across, like tears that don't fall or the ache in his chest or that feeling of being abandoned.
Right. It's not just poetic imagery, it's visceral. You really feel the weight of those emotions.
Yeah, exactly. It goes beyond the typical metaphors you might see when someone's writing about heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's trying to make these abstract feelings, loss and longing, into something you can almost touch.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
And then there's that part where he talks about crying in public,
Oh, yeah.
about trying to keep it together when you feel like you're falling apart inside.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there, putting on a brave face for the world.
It's that struggle, isn't it? Between how we feel and the mask we wear for everyone else.
Exactly. And Robo seems to be asking, how much does it cost us to keep up those facades?
Right. It
Yeah.
makes you wonder if holding all those emotions in, especially when society tells us to, just bottle it up, if that actually makes the pain worse.
It's a really interesting question. But Robles doesn't just dwell on heartbreak.
No.
There's this other side to him, too, this desire to become a better person, a search for understanding himself.
Absolutely. And we see that in Brutaflor, do queerer, which translates to like rough flower of wanting, right?
Yeah.
He lists all these figures he admires, like Mandela, the Dalai Lama, even fictional characters known for their strength and wisdom.
And then he contrasts those almost larger-than-life figures with his own flaws
Right.
and this burning desire to improve himself.
Mm.
It's not just about getting over heartbreak. It's about this bigger struggle for self-acceptance and growth.
Yeah, and he sets the bar really high for himself with those figures he admires.
He does, but there's also this humor in it, this self-awareness that makes it feel less like he's beating himself up
Uh-huh.
and more like honest introspection.
Oh, totally. He doesn't try to hide the messier parts of being human.
Like those parts where he talks about making impulsive mistakes and then instantly regretting them.
Yeah, those are so relatable.
He even says something like, this is what it means to be human, to be constantly learning.
It's refreshing, isn't it? He's acknowledging that we're all works in progress. We mess up and then we try to learn from it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's not claiming to have it all figured out. He's right there with us figuring things out as he goes.
And that's really appealing, I think.
So we have this emotional depth, this yearning for self-improvement. But Robles isn't just focused on himself.
No, not at all.
He's also incredibly observant of the world around him.
He is, and what strikes me is how much empathy comes through in those observations.
Yeah, he doesn't just see people. He feels their stories.
Like in that anecdote about the man crying in the cafe.
Oh,
It's such a simple observation, but it speaks volumes about Robles' sensitivity and how he connects with the raw emotions of complete strangers.
and it's not just that he sees the man crying. It's that he tries to understand why.
Yeah.
He puts himself in that man's shoes, imagines what might be causing him so much pain. There's real tenderness there.
It makes you think about how often we just walk around without noticing the struggles of the people around us.
Yeah, we're so caught up in our own lives that we miss those moments of shared humanity.
Right. And Robles reminds us that even in our most private moments of pain or joy,
And we're all part of this larger human experience.
that recognition, that empathy, that's what connects us.
Exactly. And, he even finds beauty in these fleeting moments, like that description of the wilting flower.
Yes.
It's not some grand vista or anything.
Right.
It's this quiet appreciation of beauty, even in something that's fading away.
And he ties that into his thoughts on silence and words.
Yeah.
How sometimes silence can speak volumes.
He's asking us to listen more closely, to pay attention to the unspoken language of the world around us.
It's like he's challenging us to find poetry not just in the big dramatic things, but in the everyday, the seemingly mundane, to find meaning in the spaces between the words.
I think that's where the real depth lies.
Yeah.
Not just in what's said, but in what's left unsaid, in the spaces between the lines.
And that brings us to another really fascinating part of Roble's work, his philosophical musings.
Okay.
He doesn't shy away from the big questions, like how to handle life's challenges, how our dreams and ideals measure up against the often harsh realities we face. Right, he really dives into those questions.
Let's explore that a bit further, shall we?
Let's do it. So we're back, and we've been talking about how open and honest Fabio Robles is in his writing.
Yeah, his vulnerability and how closely he observes the world around him.
But he also has this really interesting philosophical side. He grapples with some pretty big questions about life.
He does.
Yeah.
It's not just about him telling us about heartbreak or wanting to be a better person.
Right.
He digs deeper and asks how we deal with those things.
Yeah.
How our dreams match up with reality, which can be pretty disappointing sometimes.
And he uses that image of masks and facades to explore that. Remember that line, we know it's carnival and those are masks?
Yeah.
He's pointing out that we're always putting on a show presenting this version of ourselves to the world.
It's not just a carnival thing, though.
Yeah, not at all.
He's saying it's something we do every day at work, in social situations, maybe even with people we love.
Like we're afraid to let people see the real us, with all our flaws and vulnerabilities.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, Robles does what we lose when we hide behind those masks all the time.
Yeah, we lose that genuine connection, right? If we're not being authentic, how can we really connect with anyone?
And how can we expect them to connect with us?
It's tricky because often those facades are there to protect us from being judged or rejected.
Right.
But in doing that, we might end up creating even more distance between ourselves and the people we want to be close to.
Which brings us back to that story about the man crying in the cafe. In that moment, Robles sees through the man's facade.
Yeah.
Recognizes that they both have that vulnerability in common, that shared human experience.
It's like empathy is the key to breaking down those walls we build up around ourselves.
I like that empathy is the antidote to this whole culture of masks and pretending.
Exactly. Empathy lets us see past the surface, connect with those raw emotions that are hiding underneath.
It reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles.
In our moments of weakness or sadness.
And Robles doesn't sugarcoat those difficult emotions.
No, he doesn't.
He's incredibly honest about how hard life can be.
Right.
How our dreams can be shattered, how we get disappointed, how our hearts get broken.
He doesn't try to offer these easy solutions or anything.
No.
He acknowledges the pain, the disappointment, the disillusionment we feel when we come up against those harsh realities.
But he also points to a way forward.
Yeah.
He talks about resilience, being able to adapt and keep going even when we're exhausted or feel like giving up.
He uses this analogy of a squash game.
Oh, right.
Where you have to anticipate where the ball is going to go and to adjust your strategy and keep pushing yourself.
It's a great metaphor for dealing with all the uncertainty in life.
We can't control everything that happens to us.
Right.
But we can control how we react to it.
And it's in those tough moments, Robles seems to be saying that our true character comes out.
It's how we handle adversity that really defines who we are.
There's this one line that really stuck with me. He says, "Conformity and acceptance resigns us. Comprehending life is the tragedy that will bring us peace."
Wow, that's a powerful one.
It's a tough one to unpack, but I think he's wrestling with this idea of accepting our fate versus fighting against it.
So is true peace about resigning ourselves to things or actively trying to change them?
That's a question we all struggle with, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
When do we just accept things as they are, and when do we push for something better?
It's all about finding that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. We need acceptance to make peace with the things we can't control. But we also need that drive to keep striving for more.
And that's where the Ponte da Ilusão, the bridge of illusion, comes in.
Right.
That's a strong metaphor. Bridges represent connection transition movement.
Yeah.
They take us from one place to another, but they also remind us that the journey itself is just as important as where we end up.
And that idea of illusion, it speaks to our hopes and dreams, those things we reach for, even when we know we might not fully achieve them.
Right. It's not about living in a fantasy world.
No.
It's about recognizing the power of dreams and aspirations to keep us moving forward.
Embracing that tension between reality and illusion between acceptance and aspiration.
It's in that space between those two, that in-between place
Yeah.
where we find the courage to keep going, even when we're not sure where the path leads.
And that's the lens Robles uses to look at one of the most complex human experiences, love.
His writing about love is just so raw.
So unguarded.
He doesn't hold anything back, the pain of unrequited feelings, the fear of being vulnerable, the bittersweet memories of past relationships.
But he still believes in love's power to change us.
He doesn't try to romanticize it.
No.
He acknowledges the heartache, the disappointments, the potential for pain.
But he also sees love as this essential part of being human.
Something that connects us, challenges us, and ultimately helps us grow.
There's a line that really resonated with me. If I'm going to love and be loved, to experience a great love, let it be this way. Nothing more, and above all, not an ounce less.
It's like he's setting a standard for himself.
For what real love should be.
Demanding authenticity from himself and from his partners.
Yeah.
Being willing to be completely open and loved for who he truly is, flaws and all.
And that takes a lot of courage.
To let someone see you that deeply, knowing that you could get hurt.
But for Robles, it seems like the risk is worth it.
Yeah.
He sees vulnerability not as a weakness, but as a strength.
The key to really connecting with someone and experiencing love in its purest form.
It's a beautiful perspective on love.
But it's definitely not an easy one.
No, it's challenging.
And it speaks to this bigger theme in his work, the importance of expressing yourself, of giving voice to your deepest thoughts and feelings.
And in the last part of our deep dive, we're going to explore how Robles uses writing to do just that, to discover himself and connect with others. Welcome back to our deep dive into the work of Fabio Robles. We've been talking about his emotional honesty, his sharp observations, and how he wrestles with these big philosophical questions. But I'm really fascinated by the role of writing itself. How does he use that act of creation to sort of process it all?
It's so interesting, Ray. For Robles, writing isn't just a hobby or a job. It's almost like this essential need. A way for him to work through his experiences, give voice to those things that haven't been said, and find some meaning in all the chaos.
And there are these parts where he describes actually writing with such intensity, like tears staining the paper, his hand cramping up. It's almost like you can see the effort it takes to get those inner experiences down on the page.
He even compares writing to childbirth at one point.
Wow.
Calls his words his children. Like, each one came from this internal struggle, this wrestling match with thoughts and emotions that might have stayed hidden otherwise.
It's like he's giving birth to these ideas, these insights that are so personal, but also feel universal in a way. And he's not afraid to show his flaws, his doubts, his weak moments.
Exactly. There's this rawness to his writing, this vulnerability that really draws you in. It's like he's saying, this is me, warts and all.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll see a bit of yourself in here too.
And we keep coming back to this theme of silence and words, right? How sometimes silence can be so powerful. But it's like Robles is saying that writing can bridge that gap, give a voice to those things we struggle to express.
He doesn't dismiss silence, though.
Yeah.
He recognizes that sometimes the most profound communication happens in those spaces between the words, in the unspoken looks and gestures that tell us so much about what someone's really feeling.
Maybe that's part of what draws him to poetry, that ability to say so much in so few words, to create these images that work on different levels.
His language is so rich. There are all these layers of meaning that invite you to really think about it, find your own interpretation.
Right. And then there's that part where he describes his ideal book.
Oh, yeah.
One where people become chapters, their stories, all woven together into this larger narrative.
That's so cool. It really shows how much he believes and how connected our lives are.
Yeah, how our individual experiences, even the small, seemingly insignificant ones, all contribute to this big tapestry of human existence.
It's a beautiful idea. And it highlights how writing for Robles is this way of connecting those stories, finding those threads that link us all together across cultures, languages, different life experiences.
It brings us back to that image of the Ponte d'Illusion, the bridge of illusion.
Yeah.
Writing becomes a bridge not just between silence and words, but between his inner world and the world outside, and between his personal experiences and those universal truths he's always searching for.
It lets him break free from the limitations of reality, explore those places where dreams and reality kind of blur together. And it's through that process of exploration, of creating something new, that he seems to find a sense of purpose.
So where does this leave us? What can we take away from this deep dive into Robles' work?
I think he challenges us to be more honest with ourselves, to embrace our vulnerability and find our own voices.
Do not be afraid to be real.
Exactly. He reminds us that being human is messy and complicated. It's full of joy and sorrow, wins and losses. But it's in that messiness he seems to suggest that we find what makes life meaningful.
He wants us to look deeper, to search for connection in unexpected places, and to have the courage to express ourselves authentically, even when it feels scary or uncomfortable.
He's not giving us easy answers,
Oh.
but he's leaving us with some powerful questions to think about. How do we deal with those inevitable disappointments in life? How do we find beauty and meaning when everything feels chaotic?
It's a journey of self-discovery, and Robles is inviting us to come along with him. He wants us to explore his words, find our own interpretations, and ultimately use our own creativity to make sense of this crazy, beautiful life.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Fabio Robles. We hope his words have sparked something in you, maybe a new understanding of yourselves or the world around you.
And remember, the journey doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep creating